For more than 100 years, the Haley Red Family Foundation has proudly supported Auburn University scholarships, investing in students' dreams and brighter futures. For over 25 years, we've also stood beside the Sheriff's Girls Ranch, helping young women find hope and opportunity. The Haley Red Family Foundation, building generations of success.
Welcome in again, everybody, to the Terry Bowden Show on the Auburn Undercover podcast. And today we're coming live, or Coach Bowden is, from Auburn. His first game back in 27 years. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you, Ronnie, and it's good to be back. I will say this for all of our Auburn fans that make this trek every week for home games. It's not the same Auburn that I knew 27 years ago, Auburn Opelika. Boy, has it grown. And again, I haven't purposely stayed away. It's like I decided to keep coaching and broadcasting. And so football season was my busy time, just like when I was coaching at Auburn. So I've been coaching somewhere else or broadcasting somewhere else. And finally we're able to do some remotes. And now, thank goodness, with Auburn Undercover, we're able to go and do our radio show, our podcast, live from Auburn. And I'm excited because, one, of course, to be on Tom Haley, sponsored by Tom Haley and Haley Red Development Company, takes me back because Tom's one of the first people I met, Tom Haley, when I came to Auburn years ago in it was December of 92 is when I came here. We didn't start till the next season, but he was one of the first persons I came and helped me get established, helped me build my home, and they've been a big sponsor, a big supporter of Auburn for the last 50 years. So nice for him to sponsor the show. I'm working out of FM Talk 93.9, one of his many radio stations, but we're with FM Talk 93.9 coming to you from the studio here. And I'm appreciative of that, and I'm looking forward to it. Going to go by see my house. Going to go around town. We're going to be on going to tailgate tomorrow. I've never tailgated. Of course, coaches don't tailgate. Right. You know, coaches. That's one thing we don't get to do is go tailgating. So we'll go to Tom Haley's. He'll have a good tailgate, and some of our other friends around Auburn will be there as well. And then we'll tailgate. I have to admit something. My bride, my wife, we got married this summer. Of all the things, and she's with me for her first time to Auburn, her son is on the staff at Georgia. He's the player personnel director at Georgia. So, you know, a mixed marriage in Alabama usually means Auburn, Alabama. You know, there's plenty of those. And you somehow live with it because I've been around lots of mixed marriages. But this is a Auburn, Georgia mixed marriage. And I'll say this, being raised in Louisiana, you know good and well she was an LSU fan. You know good and well there wasn't. But you know what? It's great because everybody hates Alabama. It's one of those. Isn't it amazing? It's all everybody. I mean, whether you're an LSU fan or an Auburn fan or a Georgia fan, you got Alabama's high check mark up there for teams that you want to win, and whoever's playing Alabama. Isn't that the old saying down here? Well, you know, again, I don't. I've coached a lot of places and. So I've tried to be as neutral as I can, but in Auburn we're sure excited to be here. We've tried to get James Bostic. I talked to James. He's trying to be on our show. He's got to call in and do all those things you have to be able to do. And I think James is with a SWAT team down in Fort Lauderdale. He's been in law enforcement for years, and we talked earlier this week, and so hopefully he'll try to come on, but he's got to be able to. We're live today. We're not taping. We're live. So he's got to be able to pull that off himself. So I sure hope he does. He was a major factor in my first game against Georgia in 1993, where he had 183 yards rushing to help us win that game and lead us to an undefeated season that year. And so we look forward to that. So should be a lot of excitement and a lot of. I guess it starts getting crowded down here about this afternoon. It'll start piling in.
I imagine so. I imagine it's probably already pretty crowded.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess as a football coach, you stay away from the campus on game day or on Friday. And I can remember, I'm just trying every now and then on Friday. Actually, I think it's Thursday evening. Don't the RVs start to come in a little bit on Thursday evening?
They
Because
do.
I remember we would go make the rounds a little bit on Thursday evening or Friday morning as coaches. We would kind of go around and visit then a little bit from our office, in the old days where all the tailgating was right there on the old basketball. Was it Joel Eves Arena? That was
Deer
right there.
Deeks. Deer Deeks.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. And we would meet with a lot of the tailgaters there before the game, and so it'll be nice, and we'll tailgate tomorrow a little bit with the Haley group and all of those people, and some of our friends down there for that game.
Talk a little bit about your first Georgia game.
Boy, first Georgia game, I think, and I think, you learn pretty quickly the things that you got to focus on or you got to understand about Auburn when you're a head coach at Auburn. And if you went to school here and you grew up here as a student or a graduate, it probably is something just second nature to you to know. But having raised in Alabama, but not having the ties to Auburn, you quickly learn there's two things there's two opponents you better appreciate the significance of them on your schedule. And you can say every game's important, and they are, but some are more important than the other important ones. And Alabama always takes that place up top. And I can remember, I think Stan White earlier in the week when we met said that first press conference I had said that is I know I won't be accepted at Auburn until I beat Alabama, and I was lucky enough. I don't want to say smart enough, but lucky enough to think of that in my first press conference. But I just as easily could have said, oh, and by the way, we got to beat Georgia too, because that's how big that one is. And so the first one I remember coming in, it was really big. We were 9-0, and things were really starting to cook. But we had figured it out because Alabama was the defending national champion, and they were the defending SEC champion. And we came in and we had beaten Florida, who was the runner-up, and we'd beaten everybody else. And Georgia had maybe already lost a game. And so we knew, or maybe more, I knew we had said if we win this game, then and Alabama may have had a loss and a tie at that point, because we weren't. If we can win this game against Georgia, no matter what happens at Alabama, we'll have lost. We'll be the only 10-1 team in the conference. And so we had focused on this game as not only the game that we had to beat Georgia, but it also gave us a chance to claim the title, having not being able to play. And remember, we were on probation, and we could not play for the conference championship. We weren't allowed to be on TV. For those of y'all that are old enough to remember, we were the greatest game on radio the entire season because no one could watch the game on TV. And so when we got to Georgia,
I have a sticker in here that says Radio National Champions. Of course, Auburn has now recognized it. So
as a national champion, but you're right. That year we were recognized as the national champions, and then our wonderful announcer from back then, Jim Fife. Everybody listened to that radio because that was the voice of Auburn for so many years. And so going into Georgia, that was just a big game, And that was back, and I want to say the first year we played Georgia, I want to say Zaire was the quarterback still. Am I wrong there? I know it was later. I believe, and they threw it a million like crazy. They threw it all over the place. And I do know this, that Will Muschamp, who eventually I hired as a graduate assistant for me at Auburn, he was on the field playing. He was a safety for Georgia at that time, and I remember this because I broke down the film that he was on it. But it was a real excitement, and people let you know how big this game is to the Auburn people because of the connections that there is here are so strong at. And I don't know how you would explain it. I mean, it's different. It's a rivalry, but it's not the same as Alabama. And I don't know how you would say that. It has a little different. Maybe we throw the word out hatred, and I don't know that we mean hatred, but we mean something that's very similar to that.
very similar, that's right.
We mean hatred, something very similar to that when we're talking about our football rivals, our rivals. But it would be Alabama and then Georgia, because it was almost like that, the cousin that you don't get along with or whatever, or you respect, but you want to beat them worse than anything. And so that's kind of the game game has always been. is the respect. I imagine in 1993, Kirby Smart might have been a freshman there. He might have just gotten there. He played against us later on,
You did.
uh, and I think I already mentioned it in my very last game at Auburn in 1997 against Georgia. He started. He was starting for the Georgia team, and Mike Bobo. I know Mike Bobo was a quarterback the year before. I don't know if he was a quarterback in '97. I know he was the quarterback on '96, the year we went to the 4 overtimes. He was
Yeah.
in during that year, and but that's what I remember the most. How big the game was, and it was one of those where. Uh, it seemed like to me that was the one where after the game, Frank Sanders pointed to his fingers. I'm gonna get me a big ring that says "Best in the SEC." Uh,
And he did.
and we did. It was after Georgia because I think the Alabama game the next week was a chance to be undefeated, but because of the record, they had I think a loss and a half, a tie and a loss or something like that. And so we had told the players we're getting rings. We're gonna get rings, and no matter what, we can't. They won't let us go to the SEC championship, but we're getting rings. You guys win this game, and we might have said if we beat Alabama, we're getting rings. And they're not allowed to say SEC champions, but they're going to say best in the SEC. If we beat everybody here, then we're going. And back then you played almost everybody in the SEC. You didn't. There was a couple you didn't play, but we got rings, and the kids all got rings. The players all got rings, and it said Auburn best in the SEC, and everybody else can claim to be the best in the SEC. But we beat them all that year, and Georgia was such a big game. And in that game, it was a pretty amazing game.
A pretty amazing year. Pretty amazing year in general. What was it like standing up there at the opening press conference when you're hired to replace Coach Dye? And I remember, I'm old enough to remember you sitting up there and saying that you had exactly down how many games you needed to win to be the winningest coach in history.
I don't know that I used that in that press conference, but I have used that at other times. Only because I always wanted to be a football coach. You understand, in Alabama, you know who's got the most wins in college football, who the guy you're going to try to catch. My dad was already winning football games as a head coach when I got to Auburn, and I'd already been a head coach for 9 years before I got to Auburn, or 10 years. Yeah, 7 years at Samford and 3 years at Salem. So I had 10 years under my belt. But for those who don't know the story, it's not kind of a crazy story. But when I was deciding to, back then we wrote down our goals. What do you want to do as a coach? And I had written down my goals. I want to win one more game than Bear Bryant. He had won 323 games, and he was the Division I winningest coach of all time. And he coached till he was 69 years old. Passed away 1 month later. But he had 323 wins. Now I wasn't talking about the 6 national championships that they claimed or he claimed, but I was talking about the number of wins. And I can remember when I'd gotten my first job years before. I started counting how old I was and how long I wanted to coach. I said, "Dang, if I coach till I'm 69." And I win 8 games a year, and I started adding them up: 8 times 10, 8 times 20, 8 times 30. I said, "Gosh, if I can coach till I'm 69, I'll have 324 wins." And if I win eight games a year, and nowadays you don't win 8 a year, you get fired. But at that point, I was just trying to add them up. I said that'll be a goal. I'm young enough, and I don't know if the fans know this, but I don't care whether you're me or whether you're Leopold at Kansas, who has a ton of Division III and Division II wins. Yeah. Once you get 5 years at Division I, all your college wins count towards your Division I total, as long as it's at a 4-year school. So if you're, and this is why you never know, but if you have 100 wins at Samford, and then you come to Auburn and you stay at Auburn 5 years, all of those wins count toward your total, and you're counted that way. And so I had a lot of wins before I ever got to Division I that eventually counted toward Division I, and but that was more of a personal goal there. I think I promise you, when I got to Auburn, my goal was to try to win one more game than we won the year before. That's really, if you want to be honest, Auburn had won 5 games 2 years in a row, 5-6 and 5-1. And when I got to Auburn, I said, "Gosh, Lord, just if I could just win one more than they won last year, it wouldn't that people would because I not a lot of people were picking me as the guy they wanted to be the head coach, the little guy, the little short guy from Sanford, and uh, and so uh, and so I was just wanting to win enough to be accepted, to be accepted that first year. That's kind of how it started on the season. But man, we had a good run, and there's a lot of great coaches. I mean, Auburn's had a great run. I mean, right now we're Coach Freeze has got the responsibility to get us back. Well, that's the one he took. I mean, at some point we a lot of coaches won in between us. Coach Dye kind of gave us some. It kind of put us on even ground. I think that's the thing that people that are young guys people don't realize that Auburn. I mean, Alabama wouldn't play us in Auburn. In fact, there was a time when Georgia would not play us in Auburn. Georgia would play in Columbus. They wouldn't play in Auburn. And so there was a years that we weren't looked at on equally by Auburn and Georgia, but Alabama forever by Alabama and Georgia, and Alabama forever would not play us would play in Legion Field, but would not play us in Auburn. And so Pat Dye decided we're not going to do that anymore. That's it. And a lot of people don't realize this, but when Pat Dye got the job, he was at I don't know if he was at Wyoming or East Carolina when he came in.
He was at Wyoming. He stayed one year and then he had enough.
Yeah,
of that.
got to Wyoming, but believe it or not, and a lot of people don't realize that my dad was starting to win at Florida State, and a lot of people don't realize they approached my father first about that job. He was very successful at Florida State, and he was raised in Birmingham, and he didn't go to Alabama. He went to Sanford, and but that my father was pretty set at Florida State at that time. And but he even told and I don't want to throw names out there, but I know who was out there coach looking. Auburn has a habit of trying to find the new coach a little bit before the old coach gets gone, and that's not new. And he said, "Well, really, I want to stay where I am, but there's that Coach Dye. If y'all want to get a coach that knows how to beat Alabama and Georgia, Pat Dye played at Georgia, so he knows what goes on at Georgia. He knows everything about Georgia." And then he was the coach. He coached for Coach Bear Bryant at Alabama. I don't know if it was 12 years or 10 years, but I think he was recruiting a linebacker or a defensive coach and a recruiting coordinator, I think. But he knew everything about Alabama. And so when you want to bring a coach in that understands what you got to do to beat these two teams, you better know how they compete and how they play and how they recruit and everything about them. And I think that's what Coach Dye brought to Auburn. He brought not only he knew what it took to beat Alabama and Georgia, and he knew what it took to out recruit them and to bring in better players, and then to bring the game back to Auburn. And so as we get to today's game and go back over the years, that's where the '80s. Bear Bryant, his last year was 1982, was his final year, and I think Coach Dye came in around that time, 81 or 82, right around there, and started his tenure. I guess he went from 82 to 92 or 81 to 92.
81
10
to
years.
92.
Yeah, because he was here 10 years. But really got the game back to Auburn. And so that's how it got. So by the time I got to Auburn, we were playing Georgia in Auburn and playing Alabama in Auburn at that time. But Georgia had already moved their game to we were playing them home and away. And I'll always wonder why. Maybe people can tell me why they when you play at Georgia, they say you play between the hedges. Well, we got the same hedges they got.
That's right.
We call them sticker bushes. They call them hedges. So they get to say between the hedges, and we play between those same hedges. And I do know this: when we beat Georgia or beat Alabama, we beat Georgia on the road that first year. Beat Alabama at home. Those hedges don't keep people off the field. I think they were put there to keep people off the field. They don't do a thing about keeping people off the field. The sticker bushes don't hurt so bad. But anyway, it was a good win for us against Georgia, and we hope to get Stan White on. We may not get him because again he has to call in. He's down in Fort Lauderdale, and that's one of the things I want to talk to him about. The Dillard Five. We'll talk about the Dillard Five, but he was a
Some
huge
great
part of that
players.
win. Yeah,
Talk, talk about the Dillard Five. Talk about
yeah.
those guys. I mean, there were some great players that came from Dillard. I mean, Coach Dye opened that pipeline. They just, I mean, a lot
Well,
of
Dillard, the number one player in the state. We had 5 players on the team from Dillard. 5 players on the team on the roster. I think every one of them started. And the best one or the biggest recruit was Otis Mounds. He was the top recruit. And Otis and Auburn recruited him hard. And getting him, he kind of led the rest of them. They kind of wanted to go with him. And so you got him. All of a sudden, James Bostic wants to come, and Frank Sanders wants to come, and Brian Robinson wants to come, and our cornerback, and I keep forgetting his name. Calvin Jackson wanted to come, and now we had 5 guys from Dillard. Now you'd think, well, you play 2 of them, you sit the bench with 3, and you're probably pretty lucky, you know. But all 5 were starting for me. All 5. By the time I got to Auburn, no, Otis was the only. Yeah, Otis was starting at safety at that time. Yeah. He was kind of a starter at safety. I think he banged up his knee, but he had moved from running back to safety. So you had every one of them starting for us, and all of them were great. They were great additions to Auburn's program. James Bostic at tailback, for those of you who remember. Frankie Sanders at flanker made 2 of the greatest catches in Auburn history that he made. Brian Robinson had more interceptions than anybody from the free safety position, and Calvin Jackson at the cornerback was huge at cornerback, and those 5 were just big factors in our program, and
I think
they all played.
Most of those interceptions came against LSU in what, 94.
Yeah.
Florida in, 94 too.
Yeah, that was a 94 interception where we had the 3 interceptions went for touchdowns in that game. But it was Otis, and Otis Mounds. Our relationship continued when I went to Akron. I hired him as my secondary coach, and he was my coach at Akron for 7 years. And then when I went to ULM, I brought him to ULM as my secondary coach. And I want to say he's still coaching. I think he's down at Bethune-Cookman, I believe, coaching back down in Florida, coaching down there and working there. And of course, Frank Sanders went on to a multi-year NFL career to do a good job. Great player that helped us there in doing that kind of stuff. But anyway, it's a great game coming up, and it's funny. I was doing my national show that I do, Bowden Blitz, and they were saying, well, why is Auburn only, because we're underdog, but it's about a 3-point line on the national line. It's 3.5, and to me that's kind of like a toss up. We coaches, we don't pay much attention to it, but we do know what those lines are. But when anything I saw like that, to me, I said, well, that means it's a toss-up, when you talk about a field goal. And this game always seems to be that way, it's a night game that will say, well, why is Auburn, Auburn has been struggling on offense, which I think during the off season, the off week, I think there's a good chance we got some of that worked out. And then,
Jordan Hare's worth probably at least a touchdown too at night.
Well, I say Jordan, we got to get Jordan Hare. You got the game at Jordan Hare at night is worth something. It's worth points. I mean, I'm covering games this week. You got Mizzou playing Alabama in Missouri. They've won 15 straight at home. That's pretty good for them. And then you go out to Outson Field in Oregon. For Oregon's playing Indiana at home. And they've got 18 straight home games. That's about 5. See, when you got 18 home games, 6 a year, they got 3 straight years. And there's something to home field advantage. And when you take Auburn and play at home and you play at night, there's the added feature, and the added impact of that game. And so I'm anxious to get the feel from it in a perspective that I never have had, which is from the stadium and from the stands, and getting to see that and get a feel for that. Because I know what it feels like down on the field.
It's different now. I remember a few years ago, it had been decades since I had sat in the stands. And when my kids got old enough, I started bringing them to the games. But it's different now. It's different sitting in the stands versus I really didn't know how to act because I hadn't been anywhere but the sidelines.
Sideline. Well,
It's
it
a
is
different
it
feeling.
it is it is different. It is different. Having spent most of my life on the sidelines and not being in the stands at all. In fact, having been a head coach 28 years and an assistant coach one, I've not even been in the press box. I'm not, most coaches spend some time in the press box. Uh, but I had to call all my plays from on the field, which is a whole different deal because you got to, as you look at head coaches who call plays, the thing that makes it different is that those offensive coordinators who call plays or defensive coordinators who call them from the press box, they can see everything much better. They can see the depth of a cornerback. They can see the alignment of the defensive line looking down on it. From the sideline, you can't see any of that, and you can't imagine the difficulty it is, or the amount of cooperation, communication, and trust you have to have with your eyes in the press box, your eye in the sky
That's
when
what I
you're
was going to
calling.
ask you. Who were your when you got there in 93, 94,
Yeah.
and even the whole time you're there? I mean, how did you determine who's in the press box, who isn't? I mean, you got to have somebody you trust up there.
Well, yeah. I mean, you got to have nobody that you can that knows what you're wanting to know. And I was very fortunate from that regard because I had my brother offensively. Now defensively, I let my coordinator Wayne Hall would pick who he wanted up there. And I'm pretty sure I know Jack Hines was up there at secondary. Wayne Hall was a linebacker coach, and so you got to remember from practice, he watches his practice from right behind the middle linebacker every day. He doesn't stand behind the safety. So he sees the defense daily from a front seven point of view. Well, he needs to have good communication with the coach right behind him because they see the back four. And so when you're in that press box, you want to make sure that your eyes up in the box are pretty dang good. And I don't know which other coach was up there, whether Kirk Crane was up there or Joe Witt, but I know Jack Hines was up there, and Wayne Hall could look out on the field and probably tell you what the front seven needed to see. But he also needed somebody with the eyes to see how the safeties, how the secondary was doing. So offensively, it was kind of the same for me. I needed someone that I could communicate with that knew what I needed to see and knew how to watch a football game. Because you know how a fan watches a football game. You turn the TV on,
That's
every
right.
fan watches the ball. They just want to follow the ball, see how far it goes. Well, if I have somebody in the box, they've got to watch the entire defense. They've got to watch depth and angles and things like that. And so I was very fortunate when I got here on offense. I had one time my brother Tommy, and we had been raised around the same type of offense, and there was and we could communicate very easily. He wasn't afraid to tell me what he thought, whether I liked it or not, because he was my brother. A
Right.
stupid play, Terry. I don't do that. Or he also understood what I needed to see. And then Jimbo Fisher was up there with me, and Jimbo I had signed out of high school, played for me at Salem, played for me at Sanford, coached for me at Sanford, only run one offense in his life. That was the offense that we run. And now we're 10 years together coming in at Auburn. And so he also knew exactly what I needed to see. He also knew the offense. And so I was very fortunate because I'm on the field and I can't see the depth of the cornerbacks or how quickly the safety comes up on a run support, those type of things that you depend on your eyes in the sky. And a lot of people don't realize how important it is to have good communication with those people who see for you up in the press box. Um, and because quite often defensive coordinators like to be on the field because
Yeah.
they want to be able to grab their people. In fact, there are offensive coordinators that want to be on the field too, because they want to grab that. They just want to they want to have one good set of eyes up in the press box, but they want to be down close to the kids. So when they come on, if you're the offensive coordinator and you're not the head coach, when you have a timeout or a break, or you want to grab those guys and look them in the eye and figure out what to correct them. And as a coordinator, sometimes you'd rather be on the field and just have a good set of eyes up front. Other times, if you're calling the plays, I think most guys that call plays would rather be in the press box. They can see better. I never had that luxury to do, and so I learned to call plays by watching the field, and that takes time to learn that because it's not easy to. But if you run your plays and know your offense well enough, usually if we ran a toss sweep or a sprint draw, usually by just knowing who made the tackle and having memorized what their positions were, and you know how far that was from where he lined up, you pretty much know which guys are out of place or in place or doing something they shouldn't be doing because you know your offense. And then you have your with that and the help from the people in the sky or in the press box, you've got a pretty good idea. So we were very fortunate in that we had a good group that worked so good together. I think Stan White was on with us earlier this week. If y'all didn't get a chance to hear it, you need to go back and listen to some of his comments. That I thought he had some great comments, but I was very fortunate, and a lot of it was luck, is to put coaches together from the old staff, Coach Dye's staff, and from my staff that worked very, very well together, and were able to put together a group that blended old with the new and all that stuff together, because you don't have there's not a lot of learn on the job type of time when you're at Auburn. You got to know what you're doing before you get there, and you don't gotta
What was it
go
like
ahead.
working with? Well, what was it like working with Tommy? I remember Tommy told me, he said, when I got to Auburn with Coach Dye, he said, I'm thinking, well, I'm going to take over and I'll be the head coach here eventually. He said, next thing you know, a couple of years later, I'm working for my little brother.
Yeah, that was a unique situation. It wasn't the way we intended, and life doesn't really work like that way. We came from a family of 4 boys, 2 girls, where the older son got a job first, and the next son got a job second, and the third son got a job third, and right down the line. And Tommy and I went different directions when he graduated 2 years ahead of me. We played together at West Virginia, and we're graduate assistants at Florida State, but we went a different direction. Tommy became an assistant head coach at the Division I level, Power 4 level, right away, and he was at that level his entire career. And he was an assistant coach at East Carolina, at Auburn. He was assistant coach in Doug Barfield, for running backs, for Doug Barfield. He was an assistant coach at Alabama, at Kentucky, at Auburn, before he became a head coach. And and that's a route most people take. I kind of watched my dad, who left, became a head coach at South Georgia Junior College when he was 26, and was a head coach almost all his life, other than about 4 years at WBU as an offensive coordinator. I decided I would do it like he did. I would go to little schools and learn how to coach with nobody watching, so that if I made a ton of mistakes at Salem, nobody knew it. If I made a ton of mistakes at Sanford, not many people knew it. And by the time you get to Auburn 10 years later, if you're not repeating mistakes, at least there's not as many you can make, and you can move forward. But we
It's
both went a
different.
different way. And
What's
it was
different when you
difficult.
walk in? I mean, you knew how to be a head coach. I mean, it's different. We got to Florida, and Ron Zook had never been a head coach, and
Yeah.
so you'd made those mistakes, and it's different making them at, like I say, at Salem and Sanford than it is walking in the door at Auburn or Florida. That's one thing Auburn has done. Auburn has hired head coaches, whatever level, since Doug Barfield.
Yeah.
Everybody else has been a head coach, which is pretty interesting.
Well, yeah, and I think most of the time it gives you experience, and you know what to say and what not to say. There's so many things that you learn over the years as a head coach, um, and I love to watch post game press conferences, because one, I spent my youth watching my dad do post game press conferences, and he didn't win them all. He lost and won, and and you got to know how to respond when you lose, and know how to respond when you win. You've got to know what to say and when to say it, and you need to know how to act like a head coach. And it's funny. My father was, of course, he was a head coach a long time. He said, "Be careful after a game, before you've watched any video, to jump up in your press conference and say it was all my fault. I did it all wrong. I'm not a guy. I did it. It's like, put it on the cup. You need to say we didn't do well, and then go look at the film and make sure you count to 100 before you say too much about what you don't know. You're
Some good
taking
advice.
notes and you think you see, but you might find out the players didn't do that bad. We just say this mistake. Now, obviously, we all head coaches have to take responsibility for the outcome of the game. It ultimately all falls on our shoulders, but you don't want to put any ammunition in the negative hands by saying things you're not so sure. You don't have to tell people that it's your fault. They know it's your fault. You're the head coach. You don't have to go back and tell. But you want to do is correct it. If you don't correct it, you're going to live. You're going to eventually get back to you. But there's so many things you got to be careful not to jump on into a press conference after a game and say, well, that player didn't play well, or this player didn't play well, or this, and until you see the video, and it's not quite what you think it is. Till about Sunday afternoon, when you watched it 3 times, you begin to see where the mistakes were, and you have a much better, you have a much better press conference on Monday or Tuesday than you do on Saturday after the game. Let's say that's one you got to be careful because your emotions get involved, and you make statements probably that some of them you shouldn't say. We see it. We see emotional ones. We say ones where people fire out on people and things like that, and you got to hold back a little bit.
Yeah, you still got the best. You still own the best 5-year start in Auburn history. How did you pull that off?
Well, I didn't coach much longer at Auburn than 5 years. That's why I got about 5.5 in. Gee, many Christmas. We were very fortunate, Ronnie, and a lot of great players that played hard and won a lot of close ball games. And when we had a chance to win, we won. I always thought that I always and I think Stan White said the other day, Coach Dye left us. We didn't have a great record, but we had a great toughness about the football team. It was a very tough blue collar football team that I took over. We just needed some guidance and some direction, and then and some positive approach to it, and that's what we kind of did. But I was very fortunate coming into Auburn out of Sanford. See, I was at Sanford 7 years before I came to Auburn. And Sanford had my dad and mom went to Sanford. My dad coached there, played there. But Sanford dropped football in 1970 or 71. They just dropped it. Oil embargo, cost was too much. They dropped it so they could focus on basketball and the cheaper, the less expensive sports. Well, around the early 80s, they decided to bring football back. But they were already Division I in all their other sports, so they couldn't have any postseason. You're not allowed to be Division III in football and scholarship and other ones. So they began to play football Division III, but they couldn't compete in postseason, and they weren't very good at it. They won 1 game, then 2 games, and so the president of Sanford interviewed me and wanted me to be the head coach, and so he said, well, we want to move up to 1AA because we can't compete for championships unless we go up to give up scholarship football, and we can't go to Division II because you can't be 2-1. You have to be 1 and 1AA. And the point I'm trying to get to, so now we had to go 4 years, freshmen only on scholarships, sophomores only on scholarships, because when you're Division III and you move to 1AA, your Division III guys, most of them can't play 1AA football. So when we went to scholarships, almost all of our freshmen started. And we were getting our fannies whipped a lot of times. But what you'd learned when you were within a touchdown underdog, it was like your favorite. We learned that if we were going to win any game, we had to find close ball games we could win. And so you began to get a mindset of, okay, we have got to find out how to be close in the fourth quarter and win close ball games, because we're never going to get wins when we don't have any. So first year we went 4-7. Well, back then it was 11 games, 4-7, and then 5-6. And then 6-4. But by that time, all your juniors had started a lot and played. We still didn't have any fourth year. Then in our 4th year there, we finally had 4 years. But we didn't have any red shirts. We had won a lot of close ball games, and that was when we went to 12-2 and almost won the national championship there. But what happened was, I think that's where you started learning. If you're going to have good years, you've got to win the close games. You've got to find a way to play good enough to win close games, and I think that's what happened when I came to Auburn. We had to win a lot of close games. I mean, for any game, for what, I don't know that we blew anybody out, but we sure didn't blow out Vanderbilt, like 14-12, or whatever that. There were a lot of close ball games that we played that we had to win in the last minutes. And I think that's what we were good at. And I think anytime you look at a team that has success, there's a lot of close ball games that you win. You find a way to win. And I think that was the key, is that we found a way to win. And that's kind of where it starts, and for Auburn this weekend, Auburn's got to find a way to win in this football game against
winning
Georgia.
Close games is typically a sign of a well-coached football team.
Well, I mean, you got. Well, I gotta say, if you're going to have a chance to win, you got to win close ball games. You can't. First of all, you can't turn the ball over, excessive penalties, missed assignments, breakdowns in the kicking game. Short yardage or goal line, offense and defense. Those main areas that you've got to do well. If you're going to win close ball games, just think about it. Think about how many games Auburn could win or other teams that you watch on Saturday. They've got the ball and they're up by two and there's 4 minutes left. And if they can just get one or two first downs, the game's over, right? The other team doesn't, and they can't get a first down. That last the last 4 minutes of the game, can you run plays without throwing the ball and be successfully getting first down? Uh, and how much and teams that work on the little things are well coached. They tend to hold on to more than they lose, and the other team doesn't get a chance to come back. Or the other team gets the ball and they don't just back up forever and give them a chance to come back and catch up. So there's the old saying that the last 2 minutes of the half and the last 2 minutes of the game are the most important 4 minutes of football. And I would say probably the last of the game, it's more like 3 or 4 minutes because sometimes if you'll just hold on to the ball, you got the game's over. The other team can only have so many timeouts, and if you can just get first downs without throwing incompletions, you can get it that way. But I think the main thing is when you go through it enough times, you get experience doing it, and you can handle those situations.
Talk about landing the Auburn job. What was that like? You're at Salem, then you're at Samford, and all of a sudden you're at Auburn. What was that process like? I know you there was a lot going on behind the scenes. Talk a little bit about that.
And I don't know how much I'll get into that, Ronnie, but there's always a lot going on behind the scenes. If
Just
any
tell what
any
you can.
And it's like when you get on Auburn Undercover, you can read everything you think is going to happen, and everybody there thinks they know what's going to happen, but most likely it ain't going to be on anybody's internet page what's going on. It's just they're not going to let it out there, but what's going on, and quite often things are being done, and decisions are being made, and if anybody is good at what they're doing, nobody has any quite idea what they're doing. And so. It somewhere along the line when I'm at Sanford and I'm winning and I'm moving forward, uh, and things were looking like they were going to need a change. Somebody must have made some decisions behind the scenes that I would be a candidate, for that game, or somebody had been watching, or somebody had seen us play, or had read because we were right in the middle of, when you go to Sanford, the one great thing about being at Sanford is that you're right in the middle of the SEC. The SEC offices were there. You had Auburn and Alabama in the same state. You're gonna if you ever do anything successful at Sanford, you're gonna get seen. And so you got a chance to showcase what you're doing. And I've always felt like that was good for coaches at Sanford. You've got a chance to showcase your talents at a school in the middle of the SEC. And so, but other than not saying a lot of the things that go on behind the scenes, I would say that I mean I had interviewed at East Carolina, and in my own mind, I would have said, I'm probably one job away from getting a job like Auburn. I've got to take one Division I job and prove I can win again. And so that's what I assumed would happen. And as the Auburn thing developed, um, apparently there was some just people that made a decision to interview me, and at that point, that was a good. That was that. It ended up working because there were some outstanding candidates that got interviewed for the
Yeah.
job, and there always are. You don't have to look for people who would like that job. Uh, and right now, like I say, the biggest thing right now is we're talking about my job, me coming in, and not Auburn as it is right now. Because right now they just need to continue to focus on being the best version of themselves they can be, and going forward. But there is a lot of I would say this, Ronnie. You probably you know it. You've been around this business. There's probably a lot more politics that go on than you think that go on at all schools, and decisions are made, and people are influenced, or that you wouldn't think, uh, and that's just the way those things go.
That's right.
in situations like that. But anyway, hopefully it worked out good for everybody involved.
I think people were happy with the way that it with the hire. Certainly that the first 20 games.
Yeah, first 20 games, yeah, and then like I say, first 5
I mean,
years were awful good. But
first 5 years, we had 11-0, 9-1-1, 8-4, 8-3, 8-4, 8-4, and then
12 and
10
2.
games in 7.
12 and 3, was it? 12 and 3. No, 10 and 3. I'm sorry, 10 and 3. Yeah, when we lost to in the SC championship game, and doing that game, and so it was but it worked out real well. And well, now let's talk about the game. What do we think? Because this one we kind of hashed it already for a show, and I was trying to think as we get people ready for the game. What's Auburn got to do to win this game? I mean, what?
Well, leading us into that, we got a couple of questions here about the game.
Yeah.
The first one is they want to know if you can call plays Saturday. What does Auburn need to do to win the game, to control the game? Give me 3 keys to the game.
Well, I'm just trying to think, and again, I know I'm not like surprising anybody that as I look at this. And first of all, let's be positive, and I would think the pep talk tonight, or whether it's today, or what the players need to hear, is a positive. Men, you guys are so close to being a great football team. Now, to avoid any statistics that aren't good, or areas that you aren't playing your best, and let's call it like it is. We've lost 2 games. Dadgummit, lost 2 games, and we've lost to the number 5 and number 6 ranked team in the country, and we've lost by 6 and 7 points. And both games were on the road. And really, I don't know that Texas A&M wasn't a fair call game, but Oklahoma probably should have won the game and didn't play that well. And so if we do, then we're a 6th or 7th ranked team in the country. We'd be pretty happy with that. But if we're not, we're within 1 touchdown or point, then dadgum, we're in the next 10. Now, you don't lose 2 games in a row and stay ranked high, but I'm saying is you've got to. I think the players need to understand how close it is. Well, obviously, there's got to be some improvement. There's got to be some things that you got to correct to get better than that. But I mean, Oklahoma, they're talking like greatest. It's the greatest year they ever had. Well, they played a couple of Auburn wasn't scoring much against them, and Michigan wasn't scoring much. Then they played 3 group of 5 schools, and so so things got to go. Your Auburn's lost some big games. That's what I'm saying. So the biggest thing I would do is create a positive, and then hopefully during the week, I would think that's the key, is that during the week you've got to do some things that create some success. And the first thing you say, well, we can't play behind the chains. Boy, that's easy to say, but there are a lot of reasons you play behind the chains. Well, which ones can you correct? Well, the penalties on the offense you can correct, most all of them. You can correct holding penalties. You can correct. I know they've had some discussions at Auburn about the legal procedures on the offensive line. One of the linemen, one of the guards there with a hearing problem, and if you found that to be true, get it fixed. Get it fixed. Or at the very least, say, okay, we can solve that. We're all going to watch the ball with our inside eye. We're going to keep our eye on that ball, and if it don't move, we're not going to move.
That's what I was going to ask you. You and I talked about
it. Because you play it. Tennessee, you play a lot of stadiums. They're so loud you can't hear us clap. You can't hear anything. And again, back when I was coaching at Auburn, Shannon Robeek was the center. He would call this. He would call the signals, and so they could hear it better. And but I'm not sure you could even hear his, and so you would have to go silent. And so when you have to go completely silent, it does make your offensive lineman pay attention. Because you can't, if you're going on silent, there's no sound at all to tell you when the play is. And so what happens is your inside hand usually is touching the knee of the lineman inside of you. Your touch, and so when his body moves, your body moves all at the same time. And you do, and now the guards, they can kind of look in too, but they can also put their inside finger can touch the knee or the thigh pad of the center, and they know when the ball is moved. And the tackle can do that to the guard. And now, without anybody having to hear a signal, they can all go on the same time. If you have to go silent, because there are sometimes you go silent. And In fact, when you play quarterback sneak, when we ran a quarterback sneak, when the quarterback gets under, we use Damian Craig a lot to get under center for quarterback sneak, and we would either go on the first sound or on the goose. Well, the on the goose means that when the quarterback gooses the center or pushes into his rear end, the ball would be snapped. But there was no sound, so you either went on the first sound or you went on the goose. And and every now and then you could go on the second or third sound. But I didn't want any kind of cadence change on a critical play because there's just as much chance the offensive lineman will screw it up as the defensive lineman, and so we didn't change the signals too much for a critical play. But I think you can do things because we said one of the things you got to do is not play behind the chains. Well, one of those is making sure you don't have things occur before the ball's even snapped that puts you in a bad situation. And then to me, and I don't know who I said this. Well, we talked about this um, with Stan White. We talked about with Wayne Hall. And maybe Philip Marshall. No, I mentioned it too because Philip Marshall put it in a story on the on our site,
Mhm.
saying that Wayne Hall would tell you right now that the most important down defensively is first down, not third down. And so if Auburn's going to take the most important down, then it's got to be what you do on first down. And it's like, well, we need to run the ball for over 2 yards, so we can't go for 1.9 yards or 2.3 yards. Well, if you run it every down just to show you can run, you're going to get about 1.9 or 2.2 because the defense knows you're going to run. So how do you run better on first down? You don't run as often. You might run 2 out of 3, but it's closer to 50-50 on first down. But it might be 60-40, if you say it, but you got to mix it enough that the defense does not know you're going to run the ball. If you're trying to build if you're just more powerful than the defense and you're better at every position, then ram it down their throat. But that's not the way football is usually in the SEC. They're not that bad on the other side of the ball. So I think the most important thing Auburn can do is, one, eliminate those problems that occur before the ball is snapped. And that's a penalty, misalignment, and really what we don't see on our video is a missed assignment. A missed assignment quite often comes from a player not really sure of who he's supposed to block, and that's as bad as a playing behind the chains because that gives you a tackle for loss, that gives you penetration. And so I think the biggest thing Auburn would have worked on was say, man, let's make sure we don't have any illegal procedures or any false starts. We must eliminate those. And if one occurs, put it behind you and don't have another one. And so we'll see how that goes because I got to think that was featured. And then the other thing is get rid of the ball. I mean, if you're going to mix the pass in with a run, you're going to throw the ball quickly, and that doesn't mean that that's a 5-yard hitch. You can throw a takeoff down the field as fast as you can throw a hitch if you're throwing to the right guy. You don't have to hold on to the ball to throw one. Now, if you're throwing a 16-yard curl or a 20-yard dig route across the middle, you got to really hold that ball for that depth of a route. But if you're throwing a deep ball, what I call vertical movement routes, if you're calling a route that's a vertical movement, that the receiver's running a slant, so you just catch it, step, and throw, or he's running a takeoff where you catch it, step, and lob over his shoulders. Those you're not going to get sacked. You're going to get rid of the ball. And I was listening to a commentator. A lot of the analysts I listen to, and I get a kick out of because they say something, but they don't say something important. And I don't want to change the subject. One of the greatest things John Saunders, who was my partner at ESPN in New York, taught me about an analyst. He says there's 3 phases you go through when you're an announcer, and I would say this is the same thing when you're on offense. First thing you learn is to say something. Don't ever get on national TV live and freeze. And some people do. Say something no matter what. Say something. And then after you get pretty good at it, you'll say something important. And then when you're really good, you'll say the most important thing. And so I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. So some things you can do don't matter, but you can get rid of a ball on time, and I'll give you an example of that. And I think the reason I got to that, so many people blame the quarterback. I think I saw where Sarkisian said this week. Is you guys blame the quarterback because he doesn't throw deep. He doesn't take deep shots. Well, the coaches determine that half the time. The coaches determine, how you call a deep shot? I mean, if I call 278, that means you might throw short, medium, or you might 3 different routes. But if I call 278 X post, X takeoff, what do you think the quarterback's going to do? He's going to throw the tag. He's going to throw that take it. That now the coach has told him you don't got a choice. You throw it or throw it away. You're not going to hold on to it. You're going to throw a takeoff or you're going to throw it away. You can do it too. You can just use any numbers, but you can tag every number and tell the quarterback where you wanted to throw. And I have done that a lot because I didn't want the quarterback hanging on to the football and getting sacked or patting that ball down. But I think one of the keys that we would also do is to keep from having those long yardage situations. Mix the run in with the pass. I would just say this, and I think I'm not saying anything that they haven't sat around on Auburn and thought about. And then to me, if I'm the quarterback, in this situation, Georgia's got a pretty good defense. I wouldn't hold on to the ball too long and pat it down back there. I would if it hadn't opened, throw it away, take off. You look, throw it away, take off. Look, throw it away, take off, and that's about it. And it's quite often there's look one, look two, but there's never look one, look two, look three. To me, that's you're asking for trouble against a very good football team when you're going to take three looks.
What do they have to do? What do they have to do? What do they have to do with Jackson Arnold? I mean, you mentioned Damian Craig earlier and him being a mobile quarterback. Jackson Arnold is a mobile quarterback, but he's had some issues. What do you do to get him comfortable and get him ready to roll?
Well, I just think, I think what's happening is those kind of having some success will be fine. It will be the most important thing. There's a lot of guys that aren't great scramblers. Carson Beck is not a great scrambler. He's a pretty smart quarterback. Arch Manning, to me, they look at him. He can run pretty good, but I don't think of him being like Tommy Castellanos at FSU. There are certain guys that can spin and turn and dodge people and reverse field and extend the play. And there are others that are pretty smart and they see a gap and nobody's looking and they take it early enough where they make positive yardage. But I think that as you're trying to work with a guy like Jackson Arnold, who I think runs really very well, but I don't think he is a guy that runs and I compare him to Tommy Castellanos because that's a true running quarterback that can run and throw really, really well, And I think of the different type than that, But to me, you do those things that give him something successful to do. I can't tell you. I think Hugh knows what they've got to get done, and I think he can do it. I think you start with the fact that we don't need it. It's Georgia. It's probably going to come down to a field goal to win the game. That's the type. That's what's going to happen. It's not like magically we're going to blow them off the field. We're going to do things right. We're not going to We're not going to turn the ball over. We're not going to ask the quarterback to do something he can't do, and we're not going to play behind the chains by what we call and what we do. And so it starts with first downs and seeing if I'm watching tomorrow, I'll probably watch and see what are we doing every first down. Are we run, throw, run, throw, run, or run, throw, and mix it up, and the different types of things. And those throws would be ones that wouldn't give us early sacks because you don't want to get the first down sack, because you would throw the ball. But you want something that has a chance to get you downfield or get you a quick 5 or 6 yards, to get you into positive situations in there. And gosh, how many times have we seen this before? How many times have we watched a game in Jordan Hare, whether it be Auburn or Alabama? And what was the play? I keep seeing it this week on the internet. And of course, I was coaching somewhere else where the 4th and 17 and the ball hits the two defensive backs and it bounces into the Auburn receiver's hands and he runs it for a touchdown. That's one of the great wins. I've seen it several times this week. Do you remember who that was against?
That was a miracle at Jordan Hare in 2013.
Was that against who was that? Was that against Florida? Who was that against? I can't remember.
Against Georgia, Ricardo Lewis.
Yeah, that was it. But I'm saying you don't know how games will go, and the more I'm watching a lot of games and people tell them who's going to win, I said I wish I could tell you which team was going to pull some kind of playoff on the last series, because that's kind of what happens on so many of these games. So, don't have turnovers. Don't put yourself in bad long yardage situations. Play exactly the kind of defense you've been playing, because that's what you're going to have to do, is play that kind of game. And if you'll do all that, you'll have put yourself in a chance to win the game. I don't know that when we beat Alabama in 92, 93, I don't know that we were a better football team. In fact, if you remember, we couldn't piss a drop. Excuse me, we couldn't pee a drop. We didn't have very many first downs in that first half. You know, and we weren't moved. We got a safety. Remember, we got a safety and kicked a field goal. I think we had 5 points for a while there, and yeah, that's what it was. It was like 14-5 when we threw that bomb. But then all of a sudden, you stay close, don't make mistakes, keep playing, and then when the right opportunity comes, make something happen. You know, that's kind of what you got to do, and and put yourself in that position to do tomorrow. So is the weather supposed to be pretty good tomorrow night?
I think it's supposed to be pretty nice out. But
Felt good this morning. I got up this morning in Auburn, and that football weather was in the air, and it's been muggy and hot, and we're starting to get that good football weather. And a night game is a special feeling, and I'm looking forward to it. I don't think I've ever seen the eagle fly around from being in the stadium. I don't know that I ever saw it before when you're coming out of the tunnel.
it started after you left.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't remember ever seeing that. That's going to be exciting to me to see that, and I know I look forward to it. I didn't want to get into the. My wife asked me this morning, "Well, why are you all the Tigers, but you say War Eagle?" And I'm thinking, do I have time to tell the story? You know, I don't know if I have time to tell the story. I said, go ask Alabama why they're the elephants, or the pachyderms, why they're the elephants, you know, and go ask them. Or Akron why we're the Zips. Everybody has a battle. We have a battle cry and we have a mascot. That's what I say. And there is a story behind the battle cry.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. And as the legendary Jim Fife would say, our time's up and we thank you for yours.
Thank you now. Take care now.
For more than 100 years, the Haley Red Family Foundation has proudly supported Auburn University scholarships, investing in students' dreams and brighter futures. For over 25 years, we've also stood beside the Sheriff's Girls Ranch, helping young women find hope and opportunity. The Haley Red Family Foundation, building generations of success.